maybe this time we'll know when we're in there ahead of time.
1, 2, 3.
All right. Are we there? Are we live?
We should be, yes.
I do not see it yet.
I can check on mine too.
Yeah, she's checking. All right, there we are. Hey, ladies. Yes. Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Cold.
It is. It is really cold.
Freezing.
Is it cold where you are, Anita? Like, how cold is it in Albania?
It is very cold.
Like, how cold?
Let me see.
Like not in Celsius either.
Yeah, give us like actual American temperature.
34 Fahrenheit.
Oh,
we're actually colder right now.
We are. We're colder.
We are 31.
So this morning, Julie told us that we are wimps here in Texas because where she is from, it's like 0 degrees, and they're saying, hey, maybe y'all are going to start school a little bit late because it'll get warmer. I'm like, you are Texas now, baby. You've been here.
Well, it's just a 2-hour delay because they're convinced it's going to warm up. And then the kids, like these children walk to school. Like, let me be clear. This is a public school. These kids walk to school.
Yeah. So they can't. We're not talking about bus accidents and all that sort of stuff.
But also we can handle a hurricane.
Yes. We roll with those hurricanes.
We have hurricane parties here. So.
I do not. I got out of Dodge. I went and like rented a house somewhere else that had Wi-Fi.
You totally did it. All right, mamas. I hope you all had a great weekend, and I hope you are going to enjoy hearing from Jen, our coach prep person. So, Jen, tell them a little bit about you. What do you do? How do you help kids and their mamas?
So I coach students on how to improve their ACT test score. This is a space that I have been in for 15 years now.
Jen, 1 second. Is that noise? Are
y'all hearing that crackling noise?
Okay.
Yeah.
Jen, we hear a crackle when you're talking. It wasn't there when we were testing earlier.
Okay, I can take my headphones off, but I haven't done anything. I didn't do anything differently.
Okay.
It's not feedback from that.
No, it's not because they hear it too.
Yeah.
I can take these off.
Okay, let's see if that's it.
Is that better?
It's still going on, but I mean, I guess it's what we got. So hopefully maybe it'll go away. So, all right, keep going.
So I have been in this space for 15 years. I was a high school English teacher before that. And in that experience, my principal asked me to help a young man with his ACT score. And we learned that test was coachable. And the path led me to help kids all over the country. So thanks to technology, I usually meet via Zoom or FaceTime. I can help kiddos wherever they are, not just here in Montgomery County. This just happens to be where my business is based.
Right. Yeah. Earlier you said you work with people from like kids from all over the country.
All over the country. Yes. So, it's very rewarding. I get to meet some of the coolest kids that I wouldn't know otherwise. So that's really awesome. With anything that we do, whether it's a workout plan or, a sport that we play or dance or music, we get coached, or career coaching or life coaching. So I just fit into this space of helping kids maximize their ability to perform on this one test that for some families can mean tens of thousands of dollars in scholarship money. So it's not just necessarily reaching a certain score, although sometimes that's just what they want to do for personal pride. But sometimes the families are pursuing scores for different reasons.
Really, really could have used you like 15, 20 years ago. Didn't know this was a thing back then, but
it totally is. If you could give, let's start here. I know we've got a lot of mamas in here that have, kids in middle school, early high school. Let's talk to those parents first. What are just a couple of pieces of advice that you could give them that will help them look towards preparing well for these tests?
That's a great question. And the parents and students are not going to like my answer because it's a battle to get your child to read.
Mm-hmm.
But reading, I cannot emphasize reading enough. And of course, that starts pre-K. Reading to your child, the number one predictor of success with education is the number of books that a family has in their house.
Mm-hmm.
And that is research that has been verified and studied. So reading to your child, and you can still read to your child as a middle schooler. I used to read to my children when they were in middle school. It was a different kind of books, but still reading with them, talking about the material, but finding something for your child to read. It doesn't have to be super scholastic or what we might think of as, a classic. Your child doesn't have to read Of Mice and Men or, some kind of English teacher book. They can read anything. But that is going to help them because all of these tests, ACT, SAT, they have to read during them, whether it's the language arts sections or the math. The math requires reading, critical thinking, and that's what being a reader does. So I used to say to my students when I was in the classroom, if you don't like to read, it's because you haven't found the right book.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a topic that you love, somebody, a real person that you want to read more about, maybe a famous person has read a book or suggested a book and you could pick that book up. I know on TikTok the other day, a football player in the NFL was reading a book on the sideline.
I love that.
A self-help book. And he had things highlighted, underlined, and he was reading. He was having a bad game. And that author, and I can't think of the name of the book. I did order 2 copies, one for both of my children. But that book went from like 445,000th on the list to the number 1 bestseller in the country.
Amazing.
I started it. I started it before I gave it to my kids. It was great. It was very readable. It was all about believing in yourself and kind of mental toughness. So any kind of thing like that your kid might be interested in, here's this NFL player modeling great habits and behavior. Maybe not in the sideline during the game. I was a little weirded out by that. Like, is his coach okay with this? But here nor there.
That was the motivation he needed in the moment.
Yeah, at least he wasn't like on the sideline, like reading like Harry Potter or something, just like,
or on his phone.
Yeah, or on his phone, like,
yeah.
Don't worry, coach.
Yeah,
It's
all good.
Yeah,
it's all good. Okay, so that's for that point. So let's say that your kids have gotten up to the high school age where they're getting ready to start thinking about these tests. They haven't been reading, right? So like that just wasn't part of their thing, or they haven't really been preparing at all. What piece of advice would you give those moms? Because they might feel like they're a little bit behind the 8 ball, right?
It is very coachable. One of my favorite stories was a family who reached out to me and they had a week before the test. It's a very long story. It's in a national publication. Actually, I was interviewed by a news reporter, but they flew their son here to Texas. He stayed across the street from me at a resort, and I prepped him in a week. So it's never too late to learn or to get coached. The test is very conquerable because unlike maybe some misinformation, the test really doesn't change, or the things that they don't change. So if it's not too late to get your child some help, just like if they wanted to do anything, actually go to college, they make a decision to go to college late, or they make a decision late that they want to try out for the baseball team at their school. If they're really motivated to do something and you get them the right help, they're going to be fine. But I would say kind of starting early and testing often is my motto.
Mm-hmm.
I had somebody reach out this morning. I don't even know where she was from. It was on Facebook, but she has 17 days to reach for her child to reach a certain score on the test for nursing school that her daughter wants to go to. I wish she had reached out 3 months ago. She didn't, but let's dig in. Let's do the best we can. So it is best to plan ahead. And there are people like me that can advise, give a timeline, that sort of thing.
Okay. I like that. So what have I not asked you that you want to tell everybody?
So in the world of college admissions, there are 2 tests, the ACT and SAT. Mm-hmm. They are weighted equally. Here in Texas, you hear more often SAT, 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 and that's just because that's the regional preference. But I coach lots of students from right in this area, all over our county and in surrounding counties. So people do take that test here. But you'll just kind of hear them swapped synonymously, almost like we say Coke or Pepsi. And that's truly the best analogy. They are just 2 companies competing for your money, for your, to help get your child into college. There was a bit of a movement. Well, not a bit of a movement. There was definitely during and right after COVID where schools weren't requiring these tests. Just because students couldn't take the test in many parts of the country. I had some of my students during that time fly here to Texas to take the test because we were offering it before others. But now that movement is going back to test required. Just this week, another school announced that they were going back to requiring tests. So we are seeing that shift back to not test optional, meaning that doesn't mean you don't need the test to get in. It just means you can apply without it. It's fine. We'll make a decision and that just won't be something we look at. And schools are going back to saying, hey, we need these tests because they do show your ability to perform on certain academic sections or academic information.
Yeah. Fun fact, my daughter was admitted to her first university. She's graduating from ACU in May, but she went to ORU in Oklahoma, no test. And she was ready for it. And it immediately, I think it was like a week before we went up there for a visit, they called and they're like, just FYI, if you haven't taken your SAT, don't worry about it. And she is she's going to graduate with almost a 4.0. But standardized tests gave her a little bit of anxiety. She was prepared and she was ready to go. She took test prep, she did everything, but she's like, hey, if I don't have to put myself through that on Saturday, I'm not doing it. I ain't doing it. So she did get to escape that, luckily for her. But I was wondering if the universities are returning to, hey, we need you to go take the test now.
The one this week was the University of Miami in Florida. And they announced they were going back. Many of the Ivies have gone back. They just kind of come in waves. I would say we're especially seeing the higher academic schools, ones that have to have some deciding factor. What was happening is that they were getting students admitted, getting students enrolled, and students were not able to do the academic rigor at these colleges. And so, yes, it is. I understand that not everybody really performs well on these tests. I mean, but a lot of times with help, they're very coachable. It's just that the student doesn't know what to do without some coaching and some help.
And I don't blame the universities for needing some sort of measure. Like I really don't. I was grateful for her in that moment because she had a hard year with COVID and, not being with people as much. For my little introvert, she is sure a social one when it comes to her people that she loves. And she was hanging by a thread at one point. I think emotionally, just it was too much. And so I was grateful for her in that moment. But had they said, you got to take the test, or if we were doing it all over again, I sure get it.
Yeah.
It's perfectly understandable. What can you tell the moms about the most local ones, like your common Texas schools where we see a lot of high schoolers go to? I mean, I know people go everywhere, but Sam Houston, A&M, UT, Texas State, what are you seeing with their requirements right now?
So the best thing to do if you're a family with a college-bound student is to Google the school and then the words common data set. So Texas A&M, common data set. Texas State, common data set. That's going to give you your facts and figures in regards to admissions. It's a requirement that schools publish this information. Some of them are more forthright than others. Some of them bury it but if you Google it, you can find it, because it's a really hard thing to say a blanket statement just because there's so many majors, so many programs, so for instance, Texas A&M, to get into their business school would require other scores or data points than other majors. So with so many factors, it's best for parents and families to Google that information. But here's the advice that I give. It is better to have it and not need it than not have it and need it.
Yeah.
So
even as specific as schools within the school.
Correct.
Interesting.
So, you have your business programs or your honors programs. The number of people I help for nursing majors, that's something that pops up. Your STEM majors, they need to show a certain math aptitude. So, getting in the university is one thing, but getting into the program you want, the major you want, the honors programs, the honors programs at schools are something that people really, I think, don't understand or look into, but there are a lot of benefits to being in the honors program, special dorms, getting to pick your classes first. So, your child might be 1 point away from getting admission into one of the honors programs. 1 point is, and I'm using ACT, let's say maybe on the SAT, it would be 100 points, but that's so easy to get and can have so many benefits, let alone something for families to look into are merit scholarships. Those are automatic scholarships that your student can get based on GPA and test score. And those have nothing to do with financial information that your family would have. So I think when we talk about college, nobody wants to pay full tuition. So I would research that information too. So again, school name, merit scholarships. And my friends actually created a website. It's meritgrids.com. And they researched all of the universities across the country. And you can put in the school name and all their automatic scholarships will pop up. So again, those are not need-based. They might be based on GPA and or test scores, but at least families have that information and they can make a plan to achieve those goals, because it can be free tuition. It can be free tuition and room and board. It can be hundreds of thousands of dollars in some situations.
I would take the test for that, for sure.
What's the website again you said?
meritaidgrids.com.
Kayla's dropping it in the chat. All right, Kayla and I have a meeting here in just a few minutes. Julie's going to wrap this up with you guys, Julie and Anita. Julie, make sure that she is able to tell the group how her services can be used. And then we'll get a post up about her later, okay?
Okay. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Okay, Jen, I wanted to, because I want to make sure we wrap up within the time frame the moms can handle it. So what are like your top 3 tips for, say I have some kids in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. We're in that middle where we're really fine tuning our study habits. And I have a daughter who has test anxiety or just has trouble with that. What are like your top 3 tips for combating test anxiety before we're getting to SATs? She just has trouble. She's got a history test. She's not ready, or she doesn't feel ready. What do you tell them to prepare to combat test anxiety?
So first of all, if it's true, like clinical anxiety, which is certainly a situation sometimes, I'm not saying it's not, I would seek help from a pediatrician, truly. Because there are things that the pediatrician can do to help with that. Another thing is just to feel ready. So get like mock or practice tests from the teacher, your child's teacher. It could be in the form of a shorter version of the test, study guides that your child can perform at home. And also when you receive a test back that maybe your child didn't perform well on, look at a study guide and kind of look and see, was it similar to the study guide? Can you find the similarities between things that you were supposed to study and then the actual assessment? Because when I do ACT, one of the things we start to look at is what kind of things are we seeing every time we practice? Because the things we practice, when they show up on a test, that's a win. We feel very comfortable, very familiar. Just like when students take the driver's test, right? You know, they are very willing to practice for their driver's ed test. They're very willing to watch those videos. They're very willing to do practice questions. They're very willing to learn how to parallel park because they obviously want that end result. So, but nobody's just going to say, I'll be fine. I'm sure I can parallel park during my test. So it's the same kind of idea that when we know, hey, you're going to have to parallel park during your driver's test. So we have to practice it. But seeing that they can prepare for these tests is also very helpful.
Okay. And then where can people find you in order to solicit your services? And what is the target age demographic that you work with specifically for ACT, SAT? You know, when do you really want to start seeing people or students?
That's a great question. So when the students are in geometry class, and that can be different grade levels, geometry class, they should take their first baseline. That's just their first practice with no help. I also have a way that students can and families can reach out to me. I have a baseline test that students can take at their house. They don't have to take a real one or a national one, but that should be done in geometry. And then when they're in Algebra 2, that's when they reach out for help. They can go to my website, Jen Henson, actprep.com. They can access me through that. You can also reach out via Facebook. I get reached out or communicated with through Messenger quite often. So you can always reach out to me in Facebook Messenger. I am connected nationally. We have a professional organization. So if I can't help you, if I'm not the right fit, I certainly will help you find somebody who is. This morning, my price point wasn't right for a family that reached out to me. So I was able to get them to somebody else that I trust, somebody who's vetted. And so, I have a wait list. So I am not the right fit for some families, and that's totally okay. But I will absolutely help you find someone, because there are others in this area who are fantastic. We're friends, we know each other, we cross refer, versus just saying, oh, I don't know what to do. I would never just send a family away and say, okay, sorry, can't help you. I would refer out. So
Okay.
happy to help in a family that might need another resource other than me.
Okay. And then I'm thinking about the mom's questions that I would have. Let's say I have my daughter's a sophomore. She's really bright, but we really want to polish up her scores. She's a sophomore. What sort of financial commitment am I looking at for her? And then let's say that she does not have any learning disabilities. This is just practice, brush up. Let's arm her with everything we can. So what sort of time commitment are we looking at? Whether weekly or monthly, and then what sort of financial commitment are we looking at?
That's a great question. I want to first say, for those in middle school, in the early grades, and I'm glad you brought this up, learning differences. Keep the IEPs and 504s in place. If your child needs support, keep that support, because a lot of times they might not need that support maybe on a classroom quiz or test, but when you go into these high stakes tests, and they have a learning difference, those differences and those adjustments that they get with their IEP or 504 can be very, very necessary. So just because you don't need it, let's say on a Spanish quiz in class, doesn't mean that you won't need it on a high stakes test. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. When we talk about timing, it takes about 3 months to fully prep somebody. And that would be the ideal timeline. Again, I did share that I did help a kid when he had a week, but ideally,
Not ideal.
I know, ideally it's 3 months. It's once a week. They have about 2 hours total of practice work to do, just like their sport, their dance, their musical instrument. They get better by practicing. And so we coach them and help them on how to practice and what to spend their time on. Financially, you're looking at, for one-on-one coaching, private coaching, you're looking between $2,000 and $4,000, just kind of depending on timing, days of the week. There's some factors. We have groups that start at about $800. So there are options for group prep. Just like if you took a group tennis lesson, it would be priced differently than a one-on-one. I also do pop-up classes. So for families that need just, no time commitment, they can come in and take a $100 class, and then they can figure out within their family how they're going to help their child practice and use the things that they learned in that class. Just like you would go and take, let's say, a pop-up Pilates class. I'm going to go take
That's
Pilates.
exactly what I was thinking. It's personal training versus group fitness versus, can I come to the gym one time and try my hardest? So, so the 2,000 to 4,000, is that monthly or total commitment?
Total commitment.
Okay.
Yeah. To get fully prepped for the test over the 3 months, depending on which of my tutors you use, it's between $2,000 to $4,000. Because I have trained people to help me, teachers that I know personally that I've worked with, because I couldn't keep up with the demand of people seeking my help. So I have people who help me.
And do you recommend someone that helps coach students to find and apply for scholarships as well?
So there's a Facebook group that I love. For that, I'd have to, let me see if I can find it so you can put it in the links. So families should not pay somebody to help them find scholarships. So the group is Scholarship Help and College Talk for Parents. Scholarship Help and College Talk for Parents. So Monica Matthews is the she started that group. She wrote an ebook, and she has a system for how to apply for scholarships. She calls it her SMART system. The ebook, I think it's $45 maybe.
And
It's
maybe
less
that's
than
what you get
$50.
when your kids in 8th grade. You get going on that. It's all about laying the groundwork, both from a parent perspective and for your child, because you want to equip them.
So there are scholarships that start when students are in 9th grade that they can apply for. So here's what I see in my world all the time, and some of the other Facebook groups I admin. Parents are so excited because their child gets into, let's say, Tulane. My child's they got in, all this work they did, they got in. Well, we can't pay for that.
Afford it. Mm-hmm.
We can't pay for that. So starting to apply for those scholarships, I know it seems ludicrous that you would do that when they're a freshman, a sophomore, but when they are a senior, and it's February, it's really late to start thinking about those things. So, $500, $1,000, those things add up. Like I said, she has a system, and if they join that Facebook group and they start looking through the posts and go back, she has like an area in her house, a table where they kept all those materials, a spreadsheet, a this, a that. I mean, even your child learning how to address an envelope,
or keep a spreadsheet of people they've reached out to and following up. I mean, that's a skill. I mean, that I maintain in real estate. These are just the act of doing it is a learning process. So this is really. Now, I meant to ask earlier, do you meet with students virtually or in person, both, hybrid?
So both. Some local students I meet in person in Montgomery. We won't be meeting tomorrow, I don't think, in Montgomery. So I'll be meeting them on FaceTime. But it's interesting because the ones I have right now in person, over the holidays, we all met on FaceTime because we weren't all here at the same time. So I do both. 95% of my students, though, I meet via some kind of online interface. So when we moved from across the country to here in Texas, that's when I started meeting over FaceTime and Zoom, and the results are no different. I just had a student go up, he went from a 24 to a 32 on his ACT. Not even fully done with my program. He had about 4 more sessions left, so he is going to test again. I've only met him like this, on Zoom. It works. It's no different. I think sometimes people they think back to COVID learning, and God bless the teachers and things to get through that time. I'm not judging that at all. I don't know how I would have made it through if I were still in the classroom. So please, teachers, I love you. You are fantastic. We need you. But I think what parents think of is that time, and they're like, my kid can't learn online. Well, I'm teaching just like this when I'm teaching your child on Zoom. It is one-on-one, and I'm asking them for feedback. So it does work. It works because it's live teaching. So whether it's live and we're sharing air, or live and we're not sharing air, it's still live.
That's great. One final question for you. What are 1 to 3 podcasts you would recommend for parents and or students working towards this goal of get some scholarships, get high scores, get into the best schools, and equip your kids?
So I like Tests and the Rest, TESTS, Tests and the Rest. That's by my friends Mike and Amy. They're test prep professionals just like me. They interview lots of different people for lots of different topics related to test prep. I've been their guest twice for things that I tend to work a lot with athletes, but that's a whole side note. So that is a great one. I also would follow, I don't know that he has a podcast, but the Tulane University admissions director, and I can't think of his name right now. He has a blog. He offers tips about applying to college, and he is very real. His blogs are very readable, and he shares his experiences, especially in the wake of like test optional and what does it mean to apply for scholarships, that sort of thing. He's wonderful. And I run a few Facebook groups that offer timelines and things. So one of mine is Ask the Experts, ACT and SAT Q&A. Families can join that. And I just posted today, the ACT extended their February test deadline by 4 days. I posted a coupon code, so we have a lot of families that are in that. They join it when their child is on the younger end, 9th grade, 10th grade, but at least they're seeing this information and they're getting used to it, and they know they can trust us, and we're going to remind them to apply.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. I've taken a lot of notes for the moms to just honestly dig in and also put their kids and students to work, and kind of learn how to do this on their own and start listening and figuring out how, if they want to go to a really nice school, we also have to figure out how we can afford it. So there's a lot we can help and guide them to dig into that. And so I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
Sure. I have a timeline. Families can reach out. I created a timeline by grade level, and maybe I'll send that into the group. And I don't know if there's a way to post it on.
Well, yeah, if you send it, Anita and I can help put it up for the moms. And then of course, make sure that we have your contact information. We have that, Anita, I know I have her website written down, so that if they want to reach out to you and maybe schedule like a consult or something,
yeah,
they can do that. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. All right. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye. Stay warm.
Yes.